June 4th, 1943, 10:07 p.m. Railroad Street, Mexia, Texas. Population, 6,000 souls, one traffic light. And tonight, every single one of them is standing in the dark between the cotton gin and the ice plant, waiting for a train that is already 23 minutes late. The locomotive finally sighs into view, headlamp cutting a white tunnel through the warm Texas night. Brake shoes scream. Steam hisses. Doors roll open. 1,850 men of Rommel's Afrika Korps step down onto American soil for the first time. They are sunburnt skeletons in tattered tropical uniforms, boots held together with wire, eyes still full of desert sand and defeat. They expect dogs, shouts, rifle butts. Instead, they get silence and something far worse. Electric lights. Not the dim yellow glow of a few government buildings. Not the occasional street lamp, reserved for officers' quarters. Every porch light in Mejia is blazing. Every shop window. Every farmhouse for 20 miles in every direction. A constellation of man-made stars stretching to the horizon where Germany had been ordered into total darkness for 3 years. Under-Officer Heinz Radke, Iron Cross First Class, 26 years old, stops dead on the metal steps of the Pullman car. His diary entry that night will become the most quoted single sentence in the entire literature of German captivity. The Americans must be lying to us. No nation could possess such abundance while fighting a war on two fronts. He writes it by the light of a bedside lamp in a prisoner barracks that has its own electric fan. The pencil shakes because the lamp is not rationed. It simply stays on. 3 weeks earlier, these same men had surrendered at Tunis, the most experienced desert soldiers the Wehrmacht ever fielded. They had held the Mareth line with nothing but courage and 88mm shells. They had watched British prisoners starve on half a liter of water a day. They had believed Goebbels when he said America was a decadent jazz nation of gangsters and Jews, already collapsing under its own contradictions. Now they stand in a small Texas town and watch a 12-year-old American boy ride past on a bicycle with a battery headlamp brighter than anything issued to a German battalion at night. A woman hands out Coca-Colas from an ice chest. Another offers homemade peach ice cream. No one spits. No one screams, Nazi. They simply stare, the way men stare at something impossible. The camp commander, Colonel John W. Duckworth, walks the line in shirt sleeves. He speaks fluent German learned at Heidelberg before the war. "Welcome to Texas, gentlemen," he says, pronouncing the R like a native. "Dinner is roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and as much iced tea as you can drink. Tomorrow you'll get new underwear, socks, and a toothbrush. Each." A ripple of disbelief moves down the column. Some laugh, a short, nervous bark. They think it is propaganda. It is not. Later that night, in the brand-new barracks of Camp Mejia, built in 72 days by the same CBs who will soon build runways on Pacific atolls, the lights stay on until 11 p.m. because the guards forgot to turn them off. They have that much electricity. They simply forgot. Oberleutnant Wilhelm von Stobern, scion of a Prussian family that has fought in every German war since 1640, sits on his bunk and stares at the glowing bulb overhead. He whispers to the man beside him, a former law student from Munich named Kurt Zimmermann, if this is what their prisoners get, what the hell do their soldiers eat? Zimmermann has no answer. He is too busy trying not to cry at the sight of a flush toilet that actually works. Outside, the Texas night is full of insects and the smell of mesquite smoke from 1,000 backyard barbecues. Inside the wire, 1,850 men who once believed they were the master race discover that the master race is about to be issued 2 blankets each, because the American quartermaster thinks one might not be enough. The psychological demolition of the Third Reich begins here, not with a speech, not with a pamphlet, with a light switch that nobody bothers to turn off. Fade to black on the single naked bulb above Radke's bunk, burning steady and merciless, long after the guard have gone to bed. May 13, 1943. Cape Bon Peninsula, Tunisia. The Afrika Korps dies at 11:47 a.m. on a Thursday. General von Arnim signs a surrender in a dusty schoolroom while outside, 250,000 Germans and Italians drop their rifles in the dirt like children ordered to put away toys they have broken. No one cheers. The British are too tired. The Americans too stunned by the sheer number of prisoners. Unteroffizier Heinz Radke stands in the shade of an olive tree, hands on his head, watching an American sergeant hand out Camel cigarettes to men who haven't smoked in 6 weeks. The sergeant is black. The Germans stare as if they are seeing a unicorn. Goebbels never mentioned this. Within 48 hours, the Americans have photographed, fingerprinted, deloused, and inoculated 60,000 men with an efficiency that makes the Wehrmacht look like the Austro-Hungarian army of 1866. A German medical officer, Dr. Friedrich Bauer, watches an American corpsman draw penicillin from a vial the size of a cognac bottle. He asks, voice cracking, "How many doses is that?" The corpsman shrugs. "Enough for the whole damn camp." "Why, Doc, you short back home?" Bauer does not answer. Back home, they are amputating legs for want of sulfa powder. They march the prisoners 25 kilometers to the holding pens outside Oren. The cages are 20 acres of barbed wire in the desert, but inside each cage there are water bozers pumping ice-cold water 24 hours a day. Real latrines with seats. And the food. Good God, the food. White bread that is still warm. Tin Spam thick enough to stand a spoon in. Real coffee with sugar. Meat stew twice a day. Radke writes in the margin of a captured British map, the only paper he has left. "They are feeding us better than our own commissariat fed us in 1940, when we were winning." Kurt Zimmerman, the law student from Munich, sits against a wire at sunset and watches American trucks unload crates of oranges. The drivers peel them with pocket knives and throw the rinds on the ground without thinking. In Germany, his mother is boiling wallpaper paste to make soup. He starts to laugh, an ugly, broken sound, and cannot stop. Across the compound, Oberleutnant von Stobern stands with a group of officers who still believe this is all theater. They are waiting for the mask to slip, for the beatings to begin. Instead, an American lieutenant walks up with a clipboard and perfect Berlin German. "Any officers here speak English? We need translators for the hospital tents. Pay is 10 cents a day, plus extra cigarettes." A Hauptmann spits on the ground. "We do not work for Jews." The American lieutenant looks at him for a long moment, then smiles a small, tired smile of a man who has heard it before. "Suit yourself, Captain. The Italians already took all the jobs." That night, 3 Italian officers are seen eating steak with the American guards while the Germans watch from the other side of the wire. The betrayal has already begun, and the war is not even over. On May 29th, the first Liberty ship, SS Robert E. Peary, built in 4 days, 15 hours, and 29 minutes, steams into Oran Harbor flying the biggest American flag any German has ever seen. The prisoners are told they will sail on her sister ships. They laugh, because no one can build a 10,000-ton freighter in 4 days. They stop laughing when they see the weld seem still warm. Loading begins at dawn. No cattle cars. No 40 and 8 boxcars. They walk up proper gangways like paying passengers. Below decks, the holds have been hastily fitted with triple-tier bunks, but the bunks have mattresses. Real mattresses. As the last man boards, an American sailor tosses a half-eaten Hershey bar into the water rather than finish it. The splash is very loud in the sudden silence. Radke closes his diary for the night with a new entry, written in the dim red light of the hold. "If this is how they treat their enemies, I no longer understand anything." Out on deck, Dr. Bauer watches the coast of Africa disappear. He thinks of the field hospital he left behind near Sfax. 200 dying men and 1 syringe between them. Then he looks at the American medic handing out seasickness pills like candy. For the first time in years, he is afraid, not of dying, but of the precise dimensions of how completely they have already lost. July 1943. Somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic, the SS John W. Brown is 21 days out of the Kaiser Yard in Richmond, California. She was launched 4 days, 15 hours, and 29 minutes after her keel was laid. She is not a miracle. She is Tuesday. Below her waterline, in hold number 4, 1,960 German prisoners live in the smell of fresh paint, diesel, and American coffee. They sleep in 3 high bunks, so clean the Afrika Korps veterans keep checking for bed bugs out of habit and find none. The food comes 3 times a day on real trays. Breakfast. Scrambled eggs made from powder, yes, but powder that contains actual eggs. Bacon so thick it has to be cut with a knife. White bread with butter. Lunch. Beef stew that tastes of beef. Dinner. Roast pork, potatoes, gravy, peas, and as much milk as a man can drink. They begin to measure time by the garbage. Every evening at 1900 hours, the American crew wheels out galvanized cans the size of 200-liter fuel drums. Into them go half-eaten steaks, whole loaves of bread, gallons of milk that merely sat too long in the sun. Pineapple rings the cooks decided were a little brown. The Germans watch from the rail as the cans are tipped over the side. The ocean turns white with bread and yellow with butter for 30 seconds before the sharks take it. Kurt Zimmerman, the law student, times it one night with stolen wristwatch. 17 pounds of meat in 90 seconds. He writes in his diary, "In the final month at Tobruk, my company received 19 pounds of meat total. The Americans throw away more every evening than we saw in 4 weeks. They do it without anger, without triumph. They do it because tomorrow there will be more." Oberleutnant von Stauber stands beside him, aristocratic face pale in the moonlight. He has not written home in weeks. There is nothing he can tell his father that will not sound insane. He watches a sailor toss an entire apple pie overboard because one corner was dented. Von Stauber whispers, almost himself, "They are not feeding us to impress us. They are feeding us because this is what they have left over." On the 8th night out, the ship runs into a storm. The John W. Brown rolls 35 degrees. Men are sick in every corner. An American boatswain's mate walks a hole with a bucket of iced oranges, handing them out to prisoners who cannot keep water down. He says, in broken German learned in Yorkville, Manhattan, "Vitamin C, good for the gut. Eat." One of the oranges rolls under a bunk. A former Panzer Grenadier from the 15th Panzer Division crawls after it like a dog after a bone. He brings it back cradled in both hands, as though it were made of glass. He does not eat it. He simply holds it against his cheek and cries without sound. On the bridge, the rotating radar antenna sweeps the night every 10 seconds. The prisoners are allowed on deck in shifts now, and they stare up at it the way medieval peasants stared at comets. Radar on a cargo ship. Von Stauber asks the American captain, through the interpreter, whether this is a special vessel. The captain laughs so hard he has to wipe his eyes. "Son, every goddamn tub in this convoy has radar, even the tankers. Hell, some of the landing craft have it." That night, Von Stauber sits alone on a hatch cover and writes the sentence that will haunt him for the rest of his life. "I watched the radar antenna turn above the bridge of a freighter built in 4 days, and I knew, with a certainty deeper than any battlefield defeat, that the war was already over and we simply had not been told." Below, in the crew's mess, the American sailors are arguing about whether to finish the ice cream or let it melt so they can have milkshakes tomorrow. The Germans can hear every word through the ventilation ducts. The ocean is very wide and very quiet, except for the sound of 17 pounds of perfectly good meat hitting the water every single night. August 2nd, 1943. Norfolk Naval Base, Virginia. The smell hits them first. Coal smoke, creosote hot steel, and something sweet underneath, molasses from a ruptured barge, baking in the sun. The prisoners file down the gangway of the Liberty ship in perfect columns, still expecting the mast to drop. It never does. Instead, they are marched past mountains of crates stamped with destinations like Murmansk, Karachi, Suez. A single crane lifts an entire Sherman tank as casually as a child lifts a toy. Gefreiter Hans Muller, former Ruhr steelworker, counts 47 ships loading or unloading at the same moment. He whispers to the man beside him, "Hamburg never saw 47 ships in a month." Then the trains, not boxcars, not the filthy 40 and 8 wagons that carried them across Poland and France. Silver streamlined Pullman coaches, green and gold, with Southern Railway crests on the side. Air conditioning humming like distant bees. White-jacketed black porters in pillbox hats bowing slightly as they help the prisoners aboard. The Germans hesitate on the steps, afraid to scuff the carpet. Inside, the seats are plush mohair that smells of new money. Each window has a little hammer to break the glass in emergency, an absurdity that makes several men laugh out loud. The dining car is set with white tablecloths, silverware, menus printed in English and German. Menu for Tuesday, August 3rd. Fried chicken with cream gravy, mashed potatoes, collard greens with ham hock, hot biscuits and honey, peach cobbler a la mode, iced tea or coffee, milk. The first man who sees it thinks it is a joke. The second man starts shaking and cannot stop. They pull out a Norfolk at dusk. The train is so smooth that coffee does not slop in the cups. Night falls and the lights come on inside the coaches, soft, steady, electric. Outside, the American South ignites. Martinsville, Virginia, Danville, Greensboro, small towns that on any German map would be blacked out dots now blaze like Christmas. Every porch light, every gas station, every roadside diner with neon beer signs bleeding red and blue across cotton fields. Unteroffizier Radke presses his forehead to the cool glass and counts. 23 illuminated billboards in 1 mile. In Germany, they would have shot a man for wasting that much power on advertising. At 11:47 p.m., they slow through the Alcoa aluminum plant outside Knoxville. The sky turns white from the electric furnaces. Dr. Bauer, the surgeon, stands in the vestibule between cars, coatless, staring. He knows exactly how much power those furnaces consume. 175,000 kilowatts. More than the entire city of Munich on its best night in 1938. He whispers to no one. They are burning the roar every hour just to make pots and pans and bombers. Deeper into the night, the train passes the Ford Willow Run plant. Even at 2 a.m., the parking lots are oceans of automobiles. A, B. 24 Liberator rolls out of the hangar doors every 63 minutes, silver and new, lit by floodlights bright enough to read by. A Luftwaffe pilot, Oberleutnant Erich Hoffmann, watches 17 bombers in various stages of assembly and begins to laugh the laugh of a man who has just seen God lose his mind. Then comes a moment no diary ever quite captures. Somewhere in Mississippi, the train stops for water. The prisoners are allowed off to stretch their legs under floodlights. A black porter named Willie Johnson, 29 years old, drafted out of sharecropping, paid $78 a month plus tips, offers a German sergeant a light for a cigarette. The sergeant takes it, inhales, then realizes what he has done. He has accepted fire from an Untermensch. He looks around wildly, expecting punishment that never comes. Willie Johnson just smiles, tired and polite, and says in soft Delta German he learned from records, "Y'all want another Coca-Cola before we roll?" The sergeant sits down on the ballast stones and cries into his hands while the train whistles for departure. 2 cars back, von Stobern watches the window and finally understands the depth of the abyss. They are not just richer. They are freer in ways the Reich never even imagined wanted to be. As the train pulls away, the floodlights of the water stop fade behind them. In the sudden dark, someone begins to sing very quietly, not Deutschlandlied, not Horst Wessel. Just the old student song, Die Gedanken sind free. The thought is free. By the time they cross the Mississippi at dawn, the singing has spread through 6 cars. American guards listen at the doors and pretend not to hear. August 1943 to December 1944. The train breaks at 4:17 a.m. outside Hearne, Texas. Doors roll open onto a sea of floodlit white barracks that did not exist 4 months ago. Searchlights sweep the sky like slow metronomes. A military band, yes, a full goddamn band, is playing deep in the heart of Texas at 4 a.m. because a camp commander thinks it's funny. The Germans stand in perfect ranks, barefoot on warm gravel, clutching paper bags with new khaki uniforms, real leather boots, and 2 cartons of Lucky Strikes each. A sign over the main gate reads, in Gothic script specially painted for the occasion, Camp Hearne, home of the Fighting Texans. Population, 4,800 unwilling guests. Inside Barrack 17, Unteroffizier Radke discovers that the toilet flushes with a roar like a Stuka. He flushes it 6 times just to hear the water fall. In the next bunk, Kurt Zimmerman opens a footlocker and finds sheets, actual white sheets, 2 wool blankets, a pillow with a pillowcase, and a small bar of ivory soap that smells like heaven had a baby with a meadow. They are issued toothbrushes. Real bristles, not the chewed twigs they use in Tunisia. The first morning roll call is at 6:30. Breakfast is at 7 o'clock sharp. Menu, August 17th, 1943. Scrambled eggs, real eggs, not powder. Bacon, 8 strips per man. Grits with real butter. Biscuits and sorghum molasses. Fresh milk. Coffee with actual cream. Oranges, 1 per man just because. A Hauptmann from the 21st Panzer refuses to eat. He stands at parade rest and declares he will not be bought with Jewish decadence. An American sergeant shrugs, takes a man's tray, and eats the bacon himself in 3 bites. More for me, Adolphe. By the 3rd week, the same Hauptmann is stealing extra biscuits when no one is looking. The camp hospital is a low white building that smells of pine oil and mercy. Dr. Friedrich Bauer, later the 164th Light Africa Division, walks in expecting bandages made from paper. Instead, he finds an x-ray machine, a refrigerated blood bank, and a nurse handing out penicillin like aspirin. She injected a man with gas gangrene of the foot, saved in 1941 only by amputation, in the desert. 3 days later, the man is walking. Dr. Bauer sits down in the corridor and weeps into his surgical mask, because back in Leipzig his wife died of septicemia for one of 10 grams of sulfa drugs. Christmas 1943 arrives like a mailed fist in a velvet glove. 500,000 packages flood the camps nationwide. At Herne alone, 4,800 boxes arrive on December 23rd, each containing cigarettes, chocolate, razor blades, knitted scarves, and handwritten notes from American school children. One package, addressed simply to a German soldier from the Smith family, Des Moines, contains a fruitcake, a pair of wool socks, and a photograph of 3 blonde children holding a sign. We hope you get home soon. That night, the Methodist choir from town sings Still Nacked in perfect German under the guard towers. The searchlights illuminate drifting East Texas snow, rare, perfect, cruel. Half the prisoners cry openly. The other half pretend they have something in their eye. But not everyone breaks. In Barracks 24, a circle of SS and hardline officers has formed around a former Gestapo informer named Wolfgang Spangenberg. They hold secret courts. They beat suspected collaborators with socks filled with bars of ivory soap, no bruises. In February 1940, they hang a 21-year-old Austrian corporal in the latrine for writing a letter home that said, "Perhaps the Americans are right." They leave him dangling until morning roll call. The camp commander quietly removes the body, doubles a guard, and says nothing to the press. The Americans know. They always know. They simply wait. By spring 1940, the fault lines are visible from the guard towers. One half of each barrack sings American songs under their breath. The other half still clicks heels when an officer enters. The 2 sides stop speaking. Meals become battlegrounds of silence. In April 1940, the 1st Italian service units arrive in their sharp new uniforms. No barbed wire, paid work, weekend passes to town. German prisoners watch their former allies walk into Herne with American girls on their arms, eating ice cream cones, waving like movie stars. One Italian tenente salutes a German colonel with a banana instead of a hand. The colonel spits blood for a week. That night, Radke writes a line that will be read in history books. I have seen the future, and it is a place where even the enemy's enemies are treated better than we ever treated our friends. Outside, the Texas wind moves through the wire like a warning. Inside, the lights burn all night because no one has ever told the Americans to turn them off. The gates of Camp Herne swing open every dawn, and 2,800 German prisoners climb into olive drab trucks like men boarding ships to another planet. They ride west through cotton so white it hurts the eyes, past pump jacks nodding like praying mantises, past roadside stands where black children sell watermelons bigger than anti-tank mines. The guards no longer bother with blindfolds. There is no point. Everything worth hiding is in plain sight and too large to conceal. First stop, a cotton plantation outside Corpus Christi. Unteroffizier Herbert Lang, former village blacksmith from Pomerania, is handed a pair of white gloves and told to work the mechanical picker. The machine devours an acre in 21 minutes. Lang stands in the roaring dust and calculates. One Texas cotton gin processes more fiber in an hour than his entire district harvested by hand in 1938. The farmer, a sunburnt man in khaki shorts and cowboy hat, offers him a Coca-Cola from an electric cooler in the pickup bed. Ice cubes clink like church bells. Lang drinks half, then pours the rest over his head because he has never felt anything that cold in his life. North to the Panhandle. Gefreiter Wilhelm Hoffman, son of a Silesian tenant farmer, is put to work on a 14,000-acre wheat ranch outside Scottsbluff, Nebraska. The combine is a red International harvester the size of a Panzer IV. It cuts a swath 30 feet wide and spits grain into trucks faster than men can load sacks. The owner's 16-year-old son climbs down from the cab, greased to the elbows, and says in flat Midwestern German learned from his grandparents, "This one's getting old. Dad ordered the new John Deere with air conditioning and radio. Should be here next week." Hoffman stares at the boy's wristwatch, a Bulova, $49.50 retail, and realizes the watch is worth more than everything his father owned in 1939, including the horse. He sits down between the giant tires and vomits from pure vertigo. California, Central Valley. Oranges, endless oranges. Perfectly ripe oranges bulldoze into ditches because the price dropped 2 cents a crate. The smell of rotting citrus drifts for miles. Oberstfreiter Otto Schultz begs a foreman on his knees to let them fill a truck for the camp. The foreman shrugs, sympathetic but helpless. Government orders, buddy. Can't mess with the price supports. That night Schultz dreams of oranges falling from the sky like yellow bombs. He wakes up screaming. New Orleans, Higgins Industries. Prisoners unload steel plate destined for landing craft. Across the water, 20,000 American workers, half of them women in overalls and bandanas, weld holes at a rate of 700 boats a month. A welder named Rosie Delgado, 22 years old, 5 foot nothing, flips up her mask and offers a German private a drag off her lucky strike. He takes it with shaking fingers. She laughs and says something he doesn't understand, but the tone is unmistakably flirtatious. Back in camp that night, the private is beaten unconscious by SS loyalists for fraternization with a mongrel. Ohio Republic Steel. The open hearth furnaces glow like the gates of hell, except hell is producing 10,000 tons a day. Former Ruhr worker Paul Hartman walks the catwalk above the pouring floor and watches molten steel cascade into ingots. Spillage alone, bright orange rivers running into sand pits, would keep an entire Krupp shift busy for a week. American workers complain about overtime while earning triple what a German foreman made in 1942. Hartman closes his eyes and sees his wife in Essen queuing for 3 hours for half a pound of margarine. When he opens them again, the steel is still flowing, endless, indifferent, American. Every evening the trucks return the prisoners to camp. They bring back stories that sound like lies. The hardline Nazis call them traitors. The others listen in silence, faces lit by the same electric bulbs that never dim. One night in September 1944, Kurt Zimmerman stands on a crate in a laundry shed and reads aloud from a captured copy of Life magazine. Full-color photographs. Detroit assembly lines, California orchards, Chicago stockyards, supermarkets with aisles of canned goods taller than a man. When he finishes, the room is so quiet they can hear the Texas wind scraping the wire. Then someone starts clapping, slowly, alone at first, then the entire shed. 200 men clapping for photographs of a country that is feeding them, clothing them, and beating them with abundance. In Barracks 24, Wolfgang Spangenberg sharpens a spoon handle into a shiv and swears that when the Reich returns, every traitor here will hang. But his voice is thinner now. Even he can hear it. Outside, the harvest moon rises over the cotton fields, fat and orange as California fruit. Inside the wire, the lights burn all night again. No one tells the Americans to turn them off. They never do. The loudspeakers crackle at 6:30, same as every morning, but the voice is different, urgent, almost shaking. Attention all compounds. This is not a drill. At 6 o'clock this morning, Allied forces began landing in Normandy, France. Repeat, the invasion has begun. Silence falls so complete that the cicadas sound like artillery. In Barrack 17, the radio is already on. Smuggled valves set hidden under floorboards. American stations speak in calm, triumphant voices. 6,000 ships, 11,000 aircraft, 150,000 men in the first wave. Artificial harbors, underwater pipelines. Supply ships unloading directly onto the beaches at 15,000 tons a day. Kurt Zimmerman translates for the men crowded around him. When he reaches the part about mulberry harbors, prefabricated ports the size of Dover towed across the channel, an SS Sturmenführer laughs too loud and says it is propaganda. Zimmerman looks at him with something close to pity and says, very quietly, "They built our camp in 90 days. Remember?" The laughter dies in the man's throat. That afternoon, the camp theater screens newsreels specially delivered by 8th Air Force Courier. Black and white footage. Endless lines of landing craft. Barges of rockets. Destroyers firing broadsides so close the camera shakes. German prisoners watch their homeland being cracked open like an egg. Some cheer quietly, secretly. Some weep openly. A few sit frozen, mouths open, as if the film itself is a weapon they never trained to defend against. In the hospital, Dr. Friedrich Bauer watches a wounded American paratrooper brought in from a training accident. The boy's leg is shattered. They give him morphine, whole ampoules, then penicillin, then schedule surgery for the morning. Bauer asks the American surgeon how much the operation will cost a soldier. The surgeon looks puzzled. Cost? Hell, Doc, he's GI. It's free. Bauer has to leave the operating theater. He stands outside in the Texas heat and vomits behind the laundry building. April 1945. The secret screenings begin. Selected prisoners, never the hardliners, are marched after dark to a locked recreation hall. The projector starts without introduction. Dachau, Buchenwald, Bergen-Belsen. The first image is a bulldozer pushing naked corpses into a pit. The second is a living skeleton staring at the camera, with eyes too large for a human face. The third is an American soldier weeping as he carries a child who weighs less than his rifle. The lights come up. No one moves. Then a 19-year-old grenadier from the 352nd Division stands up, walks to the front, and vomits on the floor. Another follows. Then another. The American major in charge simply hands out buckets and says nothing. After the third screening, Wolfgang Spangenberg, the spoon-shiv man, the hangman of Barracks 24, is found at dawn sitting on a latrine floor with his wrists cut. He lives. They stitch him up with American catgut and give him American blood. When he wakes, Dr. Bauer sits beside his bed and says very softly, "You were wrong about everything. We all were." Spangenberg turns his face to the wall and cries for 3 days without stopping. In May, the re-education program, officially the intellectual diversion program, unofficially the school for broken Nazis, goes into overdrive. Stanford professors arrive by military transport. University of Chicago correspondence courses flood the mailroom. Prisoners who once burned books now queue for hours to borrow Hemingway, Steinbeck, the Federalist Papers. A reading group in Barracks 8 argues late into the night about whether Jefferson's pursuit of happiness is compatible with German Ordnung. The American Guard listening outside smiles for the first time in years. One evening in late April, Unteroffizier Heinz Radke is called to the camp commander's office. Colonel Duckworth, the same man who greeted them with roast chicken 2 years earlier, pours 2 fingers of bourbon into a jelly glass and slides across the desk. "Your war is over, Sergeant." "Ours too, almost." "I wanted to say thank you." Radke stares at the glass, then at the colonel. "For what?" "For proving that even the worst of us can be reached. Not by bullets, by light switches, by bacon, by letting you see what freedom looks like when it's too busy winning to hate." Radke drinks the bourbon in one swallow. It tastes like surrender and sunrise. Outside, the Texas sky is the color of a fresh-dug grave and a new beginning at the same time. May 1945 to May 1985. They leave the same way they arrived, by train. But the trains are different now. The Pullman cars are gone. In their place are gray hospital cars, Red Cross cars, cars with windows painted over so the returning conquerors will not see what their war has done to Europe. Yet even these battered coaches still have electric lights that work. The last thing most of them see of America is a naked bulb burning above a bunk at 3 a.m., steady, indifferent, immortal. 371,683 German prisoners sail home between 1945 and 1947. They bring no luggage except what is in their heads. Heinz Radke steps off the train in Munich in November 1946. The city is a mouth with all its teeth knocked out. His mother does not recognize a thick-shouldered man in the American overcoat until he speaks. She weighs 89 pounds. He gives her the last Hershey bar from his duffel. She cries because it is the first chocolate she has tasted since 1938, and because her son is alive, and because she no longer knows which part hurts more. Kurt Zimmermann returns to a Leipzig that belongs to the Russians. He crosses the Elbe at night with forged papers, and ends up teaching constitutional law in Tübingen. His lecture on federalism in 1958 is attended by a quiet young student named Helmut Kohl. Dr. Friedrich Bauer opens a pediatric clinic in Heidelberg with American instruments he was allowed to keep. He never charges American soldiers' children for treatment, ever. Wilhelm von Steuben, the Prussian aristocrat who once believed in blood and soil, becomes agricultural commissioner for Lower Saxony. He introduces hybrid corn and chemical fertilizer on the American model. By 1955, the farmers who once hanged deserters from apple trees are driving Mercedes bought with the profits from American-style harvests. Von Steuben keeps one photograph on his desk. The 16-year-old Nebraska boy leaning against a giant red combine, grinning like the future. Wolfgang Spangenberg, the man who cut his wrists after seeing Dachau, survives the war by 15 years. He spends them in a Franciscan monastery in Bavaria, copying manuscripts by hand. He dies in 1960 without ever speaking of the camps again. The monks bury him facing east, toward the America he never forgave for being right. The others scatter like seed. One becomes mayor of Stuttgart and names a street after the Texas town that fed him roast chicken. Another found a tractor factory in Mannheim that still uses the blueprints he sketched on the back of Camhern canteen menus. A third, quiet, spectacled, former law student, helps write the Basic Law of 1949. Article 1. Human dignity shall be inviolable. They never meet as a group. They do not need to. They recognize each other across crowded rooms by the way they butter their bread too thick, by the way they still flinch when a light is turned off for no reason, by the way they answer their children in perfect American slang when they ask for seconds. Austin, Texas. 40 years to the day since the last camp closed. 500 old men in blazers and metal step-off charter planes under a sky so blue it looks fake. Their wives carry roses. Their grandchildren carry cameras. Some walk with canes carved from mesquite taken from the grounds of Camp Hearn itself. The reunion dinner is held in the same hall where, in 1944, they first saw the liberation footage. The tables are set with white tablecloths and silverware that looks familiar. It is the same pattern they ate from as prisoners. At 8:17 p.m., the lights dim. A spotlight finds an 80-year-old man at the podium. It is Heinz Radke, once under officer, Iron Cross, Afrika Korps. His voice is soft, Texas German, Carolina German. All the accents of captivity melted into one. He does not say, former enemies. He says, we came here believing we were the master race. We left knowing we had been mastered, not by armies, but by abundance, by kindness, by electric lights left burning, because no one was afraid of the bill. You did not defeat us with weapons. You defeated us with roast chicken and flush toilets and Christmas packages sent to men who had tried to kill your sons. You showed us that a nation could be powerful enough to wage total war and still have butter, strong enough to hate Nazism without hating Germans, free enough to trust its enemies with the truth. We took that truth home in our bellies and in our bones. We built our miracle on it. And every time a German child since 1950 has gone to bed with a full stomach and the lights still on, a part of that miracle belongs to you. So from your former enemies, now your friends, now your family, thank you for the light you never turned off. The room rises as one. 500 old soldiers in American blazers and 500 American hosts stand and applaud until their hands bleed. Outside, the Texas night is full of cicadas and the smell of barbecue smoke, exactly as it was in 1943. Inside, the lights burn bright and steady, because no one in the whole wide world has told the Americans to turn them off. Fade to black on that single naked bulb above Radke's old bunk, still burning somewhere in the collective memory of two nations that learned together that the most powerful weapon ever built was a light switch in the hands of a free people.